distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this year's Africa CEO Forum's mining panel. I'm Gail Aronson. I'm the editor-in-chief of Africa Business Plus, which is the daily premium economic information service of the Jeune Afrique Media Group, the organizer of this beautiful forum. In my previous job, I used to cover the mining sector, and it's fantastic to see the emblematic project of Simandou iron ore finally coming on stream in Guinea. And we'll talk more about that later, but I wanted to have a special mention. So our industry outlook today is indeed focusing on mining infrastructure. How can mining infrastructure unlock economic growth? Today, African mines are all too often hampered by inexistent or limited infrastructure because of development costs. Yet, investing in railways, roads, ports, power plants, refineries, and smelters actually boosts mining revenues for operators, but also, of course, for governments and local communities. So, which development models should we adopt to make sure mining infrastructure projects are bankable? That's our big question today. So, with us to address this big question, we have the immense pleasure of welcoming the Honourable Minister of Industry and Transport of Botswana, Muzi Kagafela. Please give him a round of applause to welcome him. Please also welcome Michel Phillips, Group CEO of Transnet from South Africa. We also have the immense pleasure of welcoming Tony Stanning, Managing Director, Southern Africa at AGL, Africa Global Logistics. Also with us today, Lawrence Deschamps-Benoit, Global Head of External Affairs at Rio Tinto. And last but not least, Valérie Levkov, Director of Energy, Metals and Mining at IFC. Please give them all a big, big round of applause. So without further ado, let us go into our conversation. So, my first big question goes to the Honourable Kagafela. I'm going to start with a broad question. What key infrastructures are needed, according to you, to win today the Africa's race for critical minerals?
Thank you very much, Gail. And good afternoon. Good afternoon to the audience. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm honored having journeyed so far from Botswana and into this part of Africa. The most important is the ability to move minerals, infrastructure with which to do so. It becomes very costly when the cost of movement itself is prohibitive. I can speak by citing my own country, Botswana, for instance, where it's high time that the rail infrastructure, which is His Excellency Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi, our President, has pronounced on to see the light of day because we need most of the minerals which do get mined in Botswana get evacuated through the ports of the neighboring countries, Namibia and South Africa. But the means by which to get them to those ports is not so conducive for development and growth. So they pronounced on a development of a rail infrastructure called running from a place called Mamabule to Lepalale in order to ease the means by which coal reaches the port in order to then be evacuated. But the other infrastructure which I think is very important is one by which to process the minerals within. Because I think it will be a lot cheaper to mining companies if the processing plants were nearby. But as it presently is the case now, they are not. Some are in Europe, some are in Asia. I can imagine the cost of sending them to those to those destinations for them to be processed. So we in Africa, especially in Southern Africa, we aspiring to develop infrastructure which can result in the minerals not leaving the continent, but they being all processed and the final product which then gets rolled out to the public being done within the region. So it's a regional aspiration, especially in SADC and under the Southern African Customs Union. Power is also an important piece of, a very important infrastructure. Our president has set about with a power project by which it is intended to reach every corner of Botswana with power. So it's very important that power generation also is accomplished, because without it, the costs I can imagine of mining can be blown out of the roof. Gail, if you don't control me, I'm going to go on and on.
Okay, thank you for telling me that. Okay, I'm going to turn to you now, Tony. What's your perspective on this big question at AGL?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
At AGL, what do you consider to be the key mining infrastructures to develop today's critical minerals on the continent?
Hello. Yes, welcome. It's very nice to be here in Rwanda and to attend this CEO forum. And thank you for the invitation. I'm responsible for the southern part of Africa for AGL. My job today is not to sell AGL to you, but we are actively involved in the mining and obviously within the logistics sector. And I would like to explain some of the problems that we face, but also what we're doing to improve the industry. If I can give it in context, some of the biggest reserves of copper and cobalt, as you know, lie within this southern African region, particularly in Katanga in Congo and in northern Zambia in the copper belt. With the prices and the demand, the volumes have grown substantially over the years, and our prediction going forward is that these volumes probably will expand by at least 30 to 40% in the next 5 years. So how do we move this cargo and ensure it's moved efficiently, competitively to its final destination? In this regard, it's not one port that decides. We're talking about 5 ports from this particular region. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. As we stand today, 2 dominant ports exit these commodities, one being Dar es Salaam and one being Durban. And the volumes are roughly equal between the 2 ports. Durban's volume has dropped, Dar es Salaam's volume has increased. Then we have the secondary ports, which is Beira and Walvis Bay. In Walvis Bay, we've just taken over a multi-purpose terminal within the port, 60,000 square meters, where we will handle mining products and load onto the vessels. The recent addition to our network of ports in Africa, and just to give you some concept, we are probably the largest port operator, logistics company, and obviously we are now part of the MSC family, which is the largest single shipping line, which gives another added weight and strength to the products that we can offer. So let's go to Lobito. So Lobito, we secured that concession. It's a 20-year concession, and just recently actually. And to make Lobito work, we have to put metals and minerals through that port. The port can't rely purely on the local business within the Lobito region. The target over the next 5 years is to make sure that Lobito handles approximately 1 million tons of copper and cobalt. What is the issues and what are the problems today? Lobito to Congo border, good, renovated, done. You then have the section between Dololo and Kolwezi, okay, which is in the, with the Congolese railways, which is working, but it's not at a satisfactory level to move that volume. So our interest is to work with the various parties. It can be the concessionaires of the railway, it can be taking commitments in volume, to working with the mines, to working with obviously now Lobito port, because our interest is to move as much as we can, and to ensure that there's a ship calling there to move this product to its final destination, which is where MSC comes into the equation to develop it. So we're not mining experts, but our job is to ease, as I said in the beginning, improve the efficiency and make it competitive, and understand that we are competing with different ports at different times, and the situation is very fluid. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll definitely go more into the bankable aspects of the project in our second key point. But yeah, absolutely. Valérie, you've long been working at the French electricity operator. Tell us about the importance of energy infrastructure for the mining sector.
Good afternoon, everybody. So now I am the Global Director for Energy and Mining within IFC. So the good news is that energy is a key part of the mining sector. And within IFC, we develop mining activities with a multi-infrastructure holistic view. Because we know that mining needs power, needs transportation, needs water. We didn't speak about it, but more and more water is it. And so we in the IFC can bring all the facilities around those sectors. For us, it's about decarbonizing the mining sector. So power to mine is one of our key initiatives, taking into consideration that as the mining sector in Africa is growing and will grow even more in the coming years, we can take the opportunity to reshape the energy sectors of the different countries to envisage from scratch clean energy. And massive energy will make it more affordable. Taking it, energy sector as an anchor client for the energy sectors, it will allow to decrease the cost when to increase the service for the whole country. So that's one first part. And in EDF, in IFC, sorry, we are financing already clean energy projects, for example, in Morocco for OCP. We have been launching the financing of 200 megawatts of solar for OCP, just an example. Then transportation, of course, rail. It's not about road, it's about rail, which comes with a climate change and climate target. So on that part also, IFC can bring facilities and support a sustainable way of developing transportation with a multi-usage transportation. We are working alongside mining developers to enhance the railway when the railway is not sufficient, as the example you gave. So it exists, but it cannot afford such amount of minerals to be transported. And we need also to bring competitiveness to those infrastructures, because what we want is that Africa mining sector becomes competitive enough to be well positioned in the worldwide race. So we are working with CETRAG, for example. It has been a long journey, and we are financing the rehabilitation of the railway, which is 650 kilometers railway. So that's kind of the example. And on the water infrastructure, I think we don't speak enough about water infrastructure, but it is a topic which is increasing in many parts of the world, but it will come also, of course, in Africa. So better usage, enhancement, better performance to utilize water in a more sustainable way. For that, we have advisory within IFC, which can bring solutions to the developers, to the mining industry, in order to have a sustainable infrastructure for the long term.
Thank you, Valerie. I know water is a big subject actually for you, Michel, at Transnet, because in the panel where we were just now, it's something you just mentioned. So would you like to pick up the mic and transition on what's your perspective at Transnet?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. I'll speak to the water now. I threw it in. I don't move water.
Obviously.
But we move everything else.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I suppose as Transnet we're quite fortunate because we essentially manage the entire freight logistics system of the country. Botswana, we have some good relationships with Botswana. We do a lot of work with the MSCs. It's the biggest shipping line in the world and in the country that's operating. We have 6 operating divisions covering railways, which is our major and the biggest operating division. Obviously makes the biggest contribution to our revenue. And we understand the importance of railways because it's efficient, it's cheaper, and it's more environmentally friendly, you know. We can carry more when our railways are working the way it should be working. So there's a lot of work that, yes, we need to do both in South Africa and in the region to upgrade our network, maintain the network, but also to build new networks. We are very fortunate in South Africa that we have so many mines with minerals, commodities that they want to move out of the country. We have high grade, high quality coal. We should be moving around 80 million tons of coal. We have high grade iron ore moving from Sishen to Saldanha. This past financial year, I think we moved about 54 million tons of iron ore. And then, I mean, South Africa sits on 80% of the world's reserves of manganese. And manganese is a commodity that over the last 5 years has grown exponentially in the country. So it's very important, going back to your question of connectivity to the mines, that is of utmost importance, critical for us. We are directly connected throughout with all of the mines. Where we aren't connected to mines, we have been able to put together consolidation points where we can use road as a first mile, consolidate onto the railway, onto the trains, and move that into our export terminals. Coming back now, all roads and all rails, the entire network leads to the ports, right? And again, most of my experience in transit has been in the ports environment. So we operate the bulk terminals, we operate the container terminals, multi-purpose terminals, 16 terminals across the country. We also operate the car terminals or the auto terminals. And we try to serve all of our landlocked countries as well, using our infrastructure. So the relationships with the region, we've been building on it and we've continuing to build on it. The importance of connectivity and connectivity to the hinterland cannot be overemphasized. So it's very important that, you know, these African problems, I want to call it, we have the capability, we have the means, we have to ensure that we apply that correctly so that we can develop African solutions for these African problems. And I think that if we get that right, we will be able to better serve the communities in which we operate, but also grow our economies. And essentially, that's what we do as Transnet. We're a state-owned institution. A lot of what we're doing right now is trying to also reform and transform our business, where we are doing a lot of work to crowd in private sector into our business. For many years, it was Transnet wanting to be everything to everyone. But of course, we realize that the capital and the funds is in the private sector.
Yeah.
And we have to crowd that in, whether it be for funding, for infrastructure projects, and we have many of those that we will be going to the market for, but also skills and expertise, because we're building, you know, you're constructing, it's a specialist skills that you need. And, you know, we'll be engaging with the private sector so that we can ensure that we build the economy, not only of South Africa, but of the region as well.
Yeah, and we'll be talking a bit later about the actual bankability of going to the private sector, absolutely. Lawrence, I'm saving the best for the last, and we're going to talk about the fabulous story of Simandou a bit later. But for now, Rio is a global mining player in Africa. What's the group point of view on the key infrastructures needed to win the race for Africa's critical minerals?
Okay, well, look, thank you very much, and I'm honored to represent Rio Tinto and especially all our colleagues in Africa on this panel today. We are the world's second largest mining company, and we're probably out of the major mining companies, the one that has the largest footprint in Africa. We're present in half a dozen countries, including Guinea, South Africa, Madagascar, Rwanda, Malawi, Zambia, and a few others. I mean, everyone on the panel has spoken about the hard infrastructure challenge, the need for railways, for ports, the need for competitiveness. So maybe I'll focus on something a little bit different. One of the things that is critically needed in terms of infrastructure for us to develop projects in Africa is human infrastructure. That is absolutely necessary. Mines in Africa are capital intensive. Mining is a business that requires a certain number of skills, not just engineers and people who maintain the mine, but also social scientists who can help us think about our impact on the economy and the development of countries, people who do community outreach and community engagement, and that's absolutely critical. It's actually one of the major challenges that we face is, you know, how do we ensure that when we have a bankable project, when we have the means of putting the hard infrastructure to extract the ore and bring it down to the port through a railway or through roads, that we actually have the people and the human skills that allow us to not just have an impact on the country by employing them, but also allow us to run those mines. So I just want to make that point. On that point, mining is also, just end with this, mining is also an ecosystem. And we have to leverage the ecosystem in a particular country in order for our business to be successful. And that requires us to also have an ecosystem of local entrepreneurs that can benefit from the business of our mine. Local content is a huge issue in Africa, and it's a priority for many African governments. And I'm pleased to see in the room here a number of our local suppliers from Conakry, from Guinea, who service the Simandou project. But we need more. We need more. If we're able to have that catalytic effect on countries, we need more. And there we need to foster partnerships with government. So I just wanted to take a different tack in order not to repeat what my colleagues here have said. Thank you.
That's a great input. Thank you so much, Lawrence. We're actually running about 10 minutes late on the sequencing of this panel, so I'm going to ask you to be a bit shorter in your next questions now, in your next answers. So let us now delve on our second big key point today, which is what actually makes a mining infrastructure project bankable. And Lawrence, I'm going to stay with you because we all want to hear the Simandou story and how the stars have finally aligned on that very capital demanding project.
Thank you very much. Look, let me just not everyone knows what Simandou is, so maybe I should just give an explanation. Simandou is the world's most exciting and extraordinary project, mining project. It's a project that we're developing in Guinea, that makes all of us at Rio Tinto extremely proud and extremely excited. We're developing the world's largest iron ore mine. The Simandou iron ore is extremely important for decarbonization in the world. It's a high-grade iron ore that will enable us to significantly decarbonize steel production. We've been in Guinea for a long time, and what we're doing in order to be able to extract this iron ore is building a trans-Guinean railway of 650 kilometers. It will be the first time since Guinea independence that there will be an infrastructure that links the most southern border of Guinea to the coast of Guinea. This infrastructure will go through all the major regions in the country, and with that infrastructure we'll also have some deep port facilities in order to extract the ore. So it is transformational for Guinea. It's transformational for West Africa, and if we're able to get it right, it will be transformational for the way that we mine and develop projects in Africa. It's also a partnership between us and many other companies. So how did the stars align? Mining is it's a capital-intensive business. The cost of Simandou depends on many things. It depends on market conditions, on the availability of capital in the market, and obviously on the economics of the mine. And those economics of the mines are also dependent on demand. Today, the stars have aligned because there's growing demand for high-grade iron ore. We've been able to partner with Chinese companies, which we are very used to, and we've had long-standing partnerships with them in order to be able to share the cost of the infrastructure to make that mine viable for each of the partners on the 4 blocks across the Simandou mountain range. So it's that kind of constellation of things that is allowing us today to develop the project. Now, just want to be clear, this is not a project that is going to be developed. We've already executed 30% of the project, and by the end of next year, we'll probably be 80% of the way, and that will lead us to be able to have first ore from the mine in 2025 and to commission the project sometime in 2026. So we're moving pretty fast with this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. And Tony, there's another big story currently unfolding on the mining infrastructure front in Africa, and that's of course the Lobito corridor. So what does it take to make that corridor bankable? You started explaining that a bit earlier, but can you go a bit more maybe in the actual financing?
Yes, pleasure.
Yeah.
I actually remember Simandou, the project. We were involved in that project many, many years ago, and then it stopped. So I'm very pleased to hear it's starting, which is actually the issue with mining.
I think everybody worked at one stage or another on Simandou.
It stops and starts, but I'm not a financier, okay? But what I have done in my career with AGL and Bolloré is be involved in the construction of a mine and been involved in the export of the product they produce. And you have different views based on, is a mine a Chinese mine? Is it an American mine? Is it a European mine? There are different approaches in terms of the bankability and how they approach it. So there are some sort of geopolitics at play here that needs to be recognized. Coming back to Lobito, you have to remember that railway line existed and was working under the Benguela line and ceased due to civil unrest both in Angola and in Congo at the time. The mines are looking for exit of their product. They're looking for reliability and service and a rate that is competitive, and we stick at that rate. And the logistics part and the supply chain is absolutely crucial, because we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of tons. It's not just a container. So there's massive volume and massive cost involved in the process. So they need reliability. When you talk about Lobito, there is no road option. If I can just give a statistic today, all the mining stuff moving out of the region I'm talking about, 99% moves by road. 99% moves by road. which is absolutely ridiculous, given a number of different factors, which I will mention. But on Lobito, road is not an option. It is a railway option, okay? And as I said, most of it has been renovated. There's the last part to go, and there's regulation issues with Congo. In other words, the Congolese have to come to the right agreement with the operator to work on that section. Otherwise, it won't work. But the mines themselves are desperate to go to Lobito. Why? It's cheaper. It's by rail. It's more environmentally friendly. The vessels tend to go either to Europe or to the States. So there is a geopolitical factor that the cargo can move, and there's a need from the West point of view, from the Europeans' point of view, to have source of those minerals. As you know today, the vast amount of copper and cobalt moves east for the electric car industry. So the project is definitely bankable. There's frustration at the moment because we need to improve the rail. From our point of view, as a port operator, we are ready. We have invested. We're working very closely with the Angola state. We're working very closely with the various agencies who are supporting Lobito in this development, not just from Kolwezi out, but also from northern Zambia. So there's a lot of activity and development going on to make this project work. Is it bankable or not? For sure it's bankable. Just one last point, and I note what you said, Gail, about being quick.
Thank you.
And I hear what my colleague Michel says from Transnet. Transnet is a silent giant. It has an incredible infrastructure. Everybody thinks South Africa, yes, and South Africa may not get a lot of mention in this particular conference, but their structure is huge, and their network out of South Africa. I would ask Michelle what she has to do to attract that volume to South Africa, which is really, which you won't like, but it's open access agreements. In other words, operators have to be able to use their lines to move their cargo, which would help tremendously as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a perfect transition. Thank you, Tony. So, Michel, you're actually working to turn around Transnet. You've joined the company recently. You mentioned earlier what's going on with ports. You're actually tendering some of your ports. So, yeah, tell us more about your strategic plan to renew infrastructures at Transnet.
Thank you. So I'm glad that Tony has introduced it so nicely.
Yeah.
Very good. So we are certainly working to awaken the giant, you know. And he's correct. I mean, we have a rail network that's almost 30,000 kilometers across the country. Outside of just the main network, there are also a number of branch lines, and we're working to also concession those out. Now, part of the reform that we are busy with as we speak is, outside of turning transit around, there are two things, main things that I'm doing right now, two-pronged. One, the day-to-day bread and butter, efficiency, tactical stuff to get the business into a profitable position, which is why I've been appointed to turn it around. Two, that has to also go with the transformation of our industry, particularly the transformation of the freight logistics system in South Africa. So part of the work that we're doing right now, as Tony mentioned, is we are vertically separating the network from the operations. So in the next few years, you'll probably find Transnet being more of an operating company rather than what we're doing now is being everything to everyone. So we provide the network, we look after the network, we don't get any subsidies from anyone or from government to maintain this network. You can go to other jurisdictions around the world where they've gone through this. Largely the network is either owned and subsidized completely by government. We have been doing that. The time is ripe now for us to say we need to separate this. The network needs to be taken care of. It needs to be brought to the right standard. We have published the draft network statement so that the public can see what it is that this network is able to offer. At the same time, we have published what we call a draft, a proposed tariffing methodology, because private parties who want to access this network needs to understand what they're letting themselves in for, but also what it's going to cost for them to be on that network. So we are pretty much, quite far in getting to the point where we are ready to allow private access onto the network. So we are hoping that over the next few months that all of these things, the regulations, the interim regulator comes into being, they're able to provide the tariff, either approve the tariff or set a tariff, so that everybody who wants to get onto this network understands what it's going to cost, so that it can help them with bankability of whatever projects they want to run. And we can then allow that access. We have embraced it completely. We are no longer, like I said, the Transnet who thought that we could be everything to everyone. We've realized the importance of private money and private access. It's happened in other jurisdictions, and I think it's time that South Africa follows suit. So it's a matter of months, I think. We're already busy with allowing the third-party access to the network.
Well, that's great news coming from you. Honorable Kagafela, what does it take to have a mining infrastructure project bankable in Botswana?
Well, we have precedents, plenty of them. As you all might know, we are the diamond producers of the world by value, and we are the founders and of the Kimberley process, by which we seek to remove completely from the global markets or global supply chains of diamonds from conflict ridden, or diamonds which are laden or come from conflict regions. I think in Botswana we have had successive governments which have stood out as reliable, trustworthy, lack of conflict being a completely foreign occurrence to us. Ability to access the courts where there's conflict, the rule of law being observed and promoted, regular elections, multi-party states. It all boils down to trustworthiness. And that is why I think from 1968, when diamond deposits were found shortly after independence, it became quite attractive for mining giants to come and settle in Botswana. And we will continue to attract many other mining giants. We have recently attracted Sandfire from Australia, who have come to mine copper in a small frontier town, what is now a frontier town, but what used to be, could properly be described as a rural outpost called Gantsi, and many others that we have attracted, and I can only attribute that to the good governance which the investors have found Botswana to be. And as Lawrence has pointed out, I was quite happy that he broadened the scope by speaking to the relationship between the mining companies and the communities. It's a very important thing, what he has mentioned, that for future sustainability, future tolerance of one another, there's got to be a symbiotic relationship between the mining companies and the communities within which they operate, and the communities must seriously do due diligence to learn of the values of the people of the communities within which they operate, so that they do not find themselves now no longer a desirable existence in these outposts. So it's very important that that relationship exists. And also, we know that in every discipline of trade, there's pursuit of profit. But gone are the days, and I think the whole world has now evolved to focus more on peaceful coexistence of those who are exploiting a natural resource and the inhabitants of the area within which they do so. More that than pursuit of profit at all cost. In the past, conflicts which arose as a result of presence of those exploiting natural resources arose because there was an overlooking, maybe subconsciously by oversight, overlooked the importance of establishing a symbiotic relationship within those communities. So it's a whole network of things that you need to look into for you to determine whether it's a bankable project or not. Of course, the infrastructure part, which Michelle has spoken about, which we seek to feed into there. We are landlocked as Botswana, and it's important for us to have good relations with our neighbors, Namibia and South Africa, for us to gain access into the means by which eventually products get shipped out of Africa. And I can, but at the same time, there's got to be, I think, for an investor to come in, it's important also to diversify the means by which we evacuate. For instance, if we in Botswana rely entirely on South Africa to evacuate, and then there's civil unrest in South Africa, as we have seen before. I don't know when it was, when Michelle, we saw infrastructure being destroyed. We then fall into grave peril, and so too the investor who's into mining falls into great peril. So it's important also to open other avenues and diversify, and we're in hot pursuit of opening an avenue. And it doesn't suggest that we are now losing any faith in South Africa, but just to diversify into Namibia, and so that we can also, the value chain development is absolutely important, which Lawrence has spoken about. The locality entrepreneurs should be able to benefit out of the whole enterprise, for it to be embraced and for it to be sustainable and be tolerated. At the end of the day, we need a peaceful and symbiotic relationship so that it can give prosperity to all. It's a win-win for all, both the government, both the inhabitants of the jurisdiction, and the mining company. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustworthiness, is that something that's really important also at your level, Valérie, at IFC?
Yes,
Yes.
clearly.
And I'm going to insist again on our time schedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will be short because most have been said, just to insist on huge capital-intensive industry, so need stability, visibility, regulations. With the government, transparent access to infrastructures, example of Transnet, or creation of common infrastructures, not having 1, 2, 3, 4 mines developers, putting it all together in order to minimize the costs. Second, to have a bankable project, you need to be best in class in terms of cost, because at the end of the day, your revenues have to be in the market, so competitiveness. And for competitiveness, cheap money will come with environmental, social, governance to go to trusts. And it will help, of course, to secure best access to cheap money. So it's a short summary because of the time, but I think that's the key points.
Okay, thank you. We're actually having a big guest, and the person of the Prime Minister of Guinea, who's coming in that room after our panel. So we've got to really be on time. So we've got about 10 minutes left to address our third key point today. And I'm going to start with you, Honourable Kagafela. How can mining infrastructure projects be structured to invigorate the rest of the economy?
Those I've found so far, to some degree, they've already been structured to invigorate these local economies. The one I can cite immediately, speaking from home, is the mining of copper in Khanzi. When a mine sets foot comes ashore. There's a lot of value chain development. We see communities transformed. It revolutionizes their economic existence. So maybe, perhaps we could look into what more they could do. But certainly, I cannot say that there isn't much which mines do or they haven't done to invigorate the local economies. The frontier town of Hanzi, which I'm talking about, I've had the privilege of, when I left high school to go and do what in Botswana was a program of national service. It was a one street, one office, mainly government offices and no more. And when the mine came in, it just transformed. Banks came in, suppliers came in. Everybody seems to be having a bite at the pie. So maybe perhaps what they could look into is to focus more on procuring that which is capable of being procured within the locality from the locals, and also in some degree engaging the services of the locals in the transportation network, because as Tony has said it, much of it is at the moment is by and large by road. But you find that especially for landlocked countries, the road transportation services then get the procurement of which then gets obtained from the neighboring countries, not from the country within which the mining is conducted, but the ones who then have the ports. And so that could also be an aspect which they could look into. But of course, the bigger one is the rail infrastructure, which is the cost of which is prohibitive. Most governments find it extremely expensive and could account for why it's delaying for much of the rail infrastructure, especially for landlocked countries to then reach or be able to link up with those, the likes of South Africa or to Namibia. So maybe public-private partnerships could also be looked into for purposes of ensuring that this infrastructure sees the light of day and just reduce and bring down the cost of doing business for the mining companies, and consequent upon which we can then benefit a great deal also. Thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence, Simandou has a big social content. You already talked about it. Do you want to elaborate more?
Yeah, well, thank you. Look, first of all, I just want to thank the Prime Minister of Guinea for coming into the room and attending this panel. I'm very honored to have our #1 partner here in the room. Simandou's #1 partner is the government and the people of Guinea. This is a joint project between all of us. In terms of the social impact of Simandou, I mean, this is, again, something that has to start with a shared vision. And that vision is one that is the vision of the people of Guinea, that we have to help and enable and bring all the competencies that we can bring to the table in order to make that vision a reality. And once we have that shared vision, then we have what we already have today, which is a very strong partnership, and then we go into a phase of implementation. So for me, the dream that I'd like to see is really to see this project be the one project that transforms an African country. We've had mining on this continent since colonial days. None of the mining projects have really had a material impact on the lives of our people in our countries. And this time around, we cannot get it wrong. So we're going to do everything in our power, together with the government, together with the people, together with the local communities, to make sure that we listen to them, that we create jobs, that we bring opportunities, and that we leave Guinea with an ecosystem of strong, prosperous Guinean entrepreneurs and local communities. And that's really our dream for that country, because a partnership between a mining company and a country is not counted in decades. It's not even 50 years. I mean, we have a mine in the US that is 150 years old. So we're in for the long term. Some of us will be gone, but those that will come after us will continue in that partnership. So it's really important that we look at it and work together with that shared vision to make sure that this country is prosperous when we leave. So thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Tony, how is the Lobito corridor affecting the local communities, the local economies in Angola, in Zambia, in DRC? You talked a bit about it earlier, but maybe an extra word.
Yes, I'll be quick because I don't want to keep the president of Guinea waiting too long. Okay, and it's an honor to speak to you, sir. What I'd like to say is I share what Lawrence has said, because the perception of mining and the benefit for the local community has seemed somewhat tenuous over the years. I can only say from our group's perspective, okay, and let's go to Lobito. Lobito is a poor area of Angola. Angola is a rich country. What do? We go into partnerships. So the business is not just us going in and taking 100%. We have shares with local people in that business. We immediately took on 700 employees, just for reference sake. They will go on to the AGL family in terms of benefits and how we treat people and how they're paid and all of that. So in terms of employment, opportunity, and treating them as equals, this will definitely be done. And we bring experience and we bring wealth to that corridor. And I think that's all we can do, and operate with an understanding of the local environment and a trust and a responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony, for keeping it short. Michel, Transnet plays a key role in South African economy. I mean,
Yes. So I think maybe to take it to a personal level. So when I joined Transnet in 1999, I joined as, my background is in law, so I joined as a legal advisor. But when I joined, I wanted to be part of a system that builds the new South Africa. You recall we got democracy in 1994, and I was part of that first cohort of graduates, you know, who thought that we were going to change the world. So I was very proud of, you know, getting the opportunity to be part of an organization like Transnet. Now, we are not miners, but the mines will not get their product out of the country without Transnet. And interestingly, it is in Transnet, you know, we talk about our jobs, and the job is, yes, to move the commodity from one point to the end. I, in Transnet, found my purpose. And I say this to Transneters every day. Our purpose is to touch the lives of ordinary citizens every day. And we do that by being productive and by working to serve our communities. Now, it's a simple no-brainer. It's good business for a mine or any other business to take the community in which they operate with them. We are in Africa. We understand the levels of poverty in the continent. Yet we are very wealthy and very rich. If our people are not able to access that which we are taking out of the ground every day, or the benefits of that, whether it be through jobs, whether it be through education, whether it be through us adopting schools, whether it be through us building houses for people who work with us, we would have failed. And it's not a, like I say, it's not a business. It's good business, but it's the right thing to do. You have to take the communities with you. Your community is your eyes and ears. We have major, I spoke about it earlier, security problems in the country. It is the community who tells us when somebody is trying to tamper with our infrastructure. We need the community to be our eyes and ears, right? It's an expensive, vast network. We are transporting very expensive commodities. If we don't take the communities with us, we're going to fail.
thank you. Thank you so much. Valérie, you literally have 1 minute left. maybe for concluding remarks at the same time.
So the good news on all that is that there are new innovative ways of financing all this positive impact in terms of development. I will give you an example. Last year, we signed with Anglo-American a sustainability-linked loan, which is a new tool exclusively dedicated to finance social impacts activities. So it's not for a project, it's for social impacts activities. 100 million loans. And this will help, for example, to enhance the education of 73,000 students in South Africa. And there are KPIs, it is followed, so it's really an impact that will happen. So those new tools exist and can be utilized by developers. Second, multi-users infrastructures. I insist on that. We need to structure the projects around multi-users infrastructures, roads, rails, for example, and for key objectives like unlocking agriculture. You have, alongside railways, multiple small farmers or agricultors. They lack of transportation tools. Agriculture is key to Africa, so we can also do that and finance this kind of initiatives. And third, there is a broader initiative launched by Japan during the G7 presidency around, which name is RISE, which is about enhancing the downstream activities in Africa in order to bring more value added in Africa, create jobs, and develop economy in the countries. We are supporting that, and I think it answers to your question.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you. I think we can retain the key words as a conclusion. You know, we have key infrastructures, ports, rails, power, energy, but also I think we must underline skills and trustworthiness. I think these are really the key takeaways here. A big round of applause for our fabulous mining panel today, and please stay in the room because, as you've understood, we're immensely honored to be welcoming the Prime Minister of Guinea right now for a 15-minute conversation, I believe. His Excellency Bauri. Thank you.